So that was what I had landed on. But every time I thought about it, it hurt. It hurt my heart, even thinking about that was what I was going to do. And that was part of why I knew I had to do that, because it was most real. So driving, my son said, why only 2 lines? And so I explained, we're only here for a short time. I want to represent our past and our future ancestors, and just to remind myself that I'm a connection between those. And my bunnock, she's in the real far back of the van, and she said, Mama, you can't do that. And I'm driving. I look at her in the mirror, and her eyes are just shiny, and her lips are wobbling. And I said, what? She said, you have to have 3 lines. And I said, why? Like, it really surprised me, like, how emotional and clear she was. And she said, you have to be there. You're not invisible. You have to be there. Wow. My daughter taught me an important lesson in that moment. Yeah.
So then you're like, 3 lines it is. Okay.
Here we go. We're doing it. Yeah. Oh. She wants her tablet one too.
Oh my
I told her when she comes of age she can, if that's something that she still wants to do.
Yeah.
But, when I think about what the elder said, our children are waking up hungry. What are we going to feed them? I want my kids to see that our traditions are a source of strength and beauty and guidance. And that's the conscientization, that's the indigenization, kind of asserting to the world, I know that our ways are beautiful, and I know that our culture is our medicine. When I was going through treatment last year, I was so hard on myself because I kept working throughout treatment. Wow. And it, every time I would get up in front of people or host or do training or anything, like, it felt like this might be the last time, this may be the only opportunity they have to hear from a Native person. What if, just like the pressure of advocating to my absolute best ability in all of the spaces that I was in. Like, it was an insane amount of pressure that I put on myself. But it also made me realize that drive that you have, that Iglukuk has, I have that drive too. And that drive is an incredible gift. There's an urgency that's fueled there that you can put to work for our people. The trick is remembering that you don't need to be going at 10 all the time. You don't need to be maxed out all the time in every space and all of these things in order to be effective. In fact, it challenges you to push yourself to be that much more effective in those times and spaces when you have the opportunity to. You know what I mean? You can take that energy and you can transform it into something that compels you forward at the right moments. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like a superpower.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Seriously, the transformation of energy into something that you can put to work for our people, I feel, is a superpower. And it's one that I'm excited about.
I asked, how can we motivate ourselves to act with strength and positivity rather than victimization or anger?
I think it begins from a place of understanding that we've all been subjects of this education system that has hidden our history, that does not display or share our brilliance. In fact, that only really truly celebrates white Western success and tokenizes people of color and our people in terms of content. We've all been subjected to this education system that says our history started on the East Coast and traveled to the West on, covered wagons. An important part of the work is helping people to wake up. There's this book that I'm reading right now for one of my classes. It's called Community Development in Action. It's by Margaret Ledwith, and it's based on Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed, his work around those things, totally badass. But one of the things that it talks about is it can be really overwhelming. You feel like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do, and it's just like way too much to do, and the system's too big, and oh, how could we possibly do all of this? And I appreciate that in the book it was like, okay, slow your roll, it's all good, chill out, because at the end of the day, what you really need to do is just focus on helping people to wake up. And you can help people to wake up in loving ways. So in the work that we do, we say the closest distance between two people is a story. So when two people are sitting together and we're sharing our experiences, there's no space to say, you never experienced that. Racism doesn't exist because I have never experienced it. I know that you're telling me that what happened to you. There's no space for denying other people's truth when you're sharing stories about your life. Creating spaces to be able to uncover those things in a way that respects the humanity of both people helps to get us aligned in, okay, so what is it that we can do about this? Put our minds toward overcoming it. Because none of the people that are living today are the ones that made those systematic decisions way back then. We're just living in the perpetuation of that, right? The system perpetuates itself now. Our job is to take off our blinders so that we can see it. Because otherwise you don't see it. It's just invisible. Even when I'm going into spaces where I know it's a hostile space, like people are straight up hostile to Native people, hostile to the fact that they even have to listen to Native people, let alone feel like Native people are asking for privileges or benefits or, asking for something extra. Even when I'm going into those spaces, I center myself in love for my people. And I remember, I love my people so much, and I believe in us so much that that's what I'm going to share in this space. Because what's good for us is good for them. Also understanding that for white folks, our white family, there's the saying, when you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. When you have to create space to bring in other worldviews and perspectives and ideas and ways of being and living, it feels like it's being imposed on you. But that's part of the awakening that needs to happen, is that the world that we're living in right now in the United States, the white Western paradigm that we're in is not neutral. That's part of the collective lie that we're living under, is that all things are equal and this is neutral and unbiased. But it is not neutral and unbiased to this Inuit girl growing up, never ever hearing or seeing about our brilliance, our contributions to the world. That just fed my feelings of invisibility, that fed my feelings of not being of value, not being important. Hearing things like, wow, you're really pretty for a Native girl, or wow, you're really smart for a Native girl. Those double-edged compliments that they cut at your spirit and you don't even know it. The system that we're in is certainly not neutral or unbiased. And it's understanding that most people don't know that. It's finding loving ways to help them to see what we see.
I was lucky enough to catch Megan Alvanna-Stimpfle on her way out to Girdwood one evening. And we also met up in my kitchen to chat over more muktuk and a glass of wine.
It's really powerful that our leaders in the state, through First Alaskans Institute, they've been really amazing in raising this issue of decolonization at a statewide level and kind of tackling on really tough issues like race. What I think it's really important for anyone on their journey of self-discovery and identity and awareness, and understanding the impacts of historical trauma and understanding what happened to our communities and, why you may have been raised in a certain way and with so much challenge and sometimes hate, or whether it's alcoholism and you feel like you may have been broken, but it's important to not stay in that state of anger and do things from that place of anger, because that's not an Inuit way. We don't do things from anger. I mean, any person can do something from anger, but as we, re-empower our youth, you have to do it from a place of joy, from a place of strength, because inherently that's who we're. Joyful people, we're happy people. Like, we have really strong families and expectations of one another, and the protocols of your partner cousins and your teasing cousins. It's important to not be stuck in the history, but to be strong in your identity and govern and build from that. Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest distinction I see as a challenge, is people inherently understanding where they are and respecting that journey. And how do you kindly tell them to not be so angry all the time, because that's the wrong aura to push. Mm-hmm. Or the wrong reason to do things. My name is Megan Shukshak Alvanna-Stimpfle, Aguvumulurunga, Sitnasak Mulurunga. I'm a King Islander. I'm from Nome, Alaska, and I was raised by my strong family of King Island Native women. And in my family, I have lots of different names. So for my nieces, my brother has 2 girls. They call me Asak, which means aunt on your father's side. And they call my sister Asang, which is another pet name for aunt on your father's side. And then my uncles and my aunts, they call me Akaluki, which is, I was named after their father's youngest brother, Kuyuk, who was one of our last tribal doctors on King Island. Wow. But unfortunately, he didn't pass on his knowledge, so we don't know what he knew. But they wanted to make it sound like a girl name, so they called me Akaluki. and then my other Eskimo name is Shukshak, and I'm named after my great-grandmother on my mom's side. And she lived on King Island, and then was a part of that generation that had to move to Nome. Lots of different names, as you know, in our Inupiaq way of life. One reason I moved home from DC is because I wanted to make sure that I spent some of my young life in Nome and in my community, learning from my mom our language. And what's really cool to learn is the map. It's almost like the Inupiaq reference map of these relationships that exist between, communities. And the lines that we see on the map today are so irrelevant when it comes to our whole, I don't want to say kingdom, but our whole, homeland. The most exciting thing what I love about our community and being where we're from. So I played ball and basketball and ran cross country, and you don't realize when you're doing that, it takes you to Barrow, it takes you to Kotzebue, it takes you to Norvik, it takes you to Bethel, to Dillingham, and you're so competitive, with everybody around you, and the players, and how they play, and and so you start to create these rivalries. And what's been beautiful in life is every time I run into our formal rivals, like Heather or, the Barrow April or or even the Bethel girls, we still carry our identity with us from, so long ago. And those relationships that were formed in high school, those friendships, like, they'll carry you through a lifetime, because it's, it defines that whole place where we're from, all the way from Bethel, in Inuit world all the way north.
Yeah. It's like that's our understanding of the world then, right? And it's still our understanding of the world now.
Good to be who you are, wherever you are, and we carry these collective memories together, like, through time, and honoring, that is what makes living in Anchorage possible when I'm here. Because I'm not always here. Like, what I love about my work right now is I've created multi-location living, and I'm trying to just redefine how you live. Everybody wants to ask, where do you live? How do you live? And I'm like, well, I live where I am. If I'm home in Nome, I'm living in Nome. And I'm there probably half of the days out of a month. But then in the part of those days I could be in Anchorage and I'm living here. But then I could be in DC and I'm living there. Yeah. And so it's like I'm going to be living, and that's where, just like in historic days maybe, you're living where you are. Like, I'm creating a multi-location existence, but I'm not going to give up or relent who I am. And I love going home to Nome because it's like that's where I keep enriching myself, with experience.